Roth, you have a sense of losing safety, your financial security, potentially your life, and the life of your children. So the things most important to me are at risk. At least that's what my belief system was. And you are what you believe. And as a result, I started making huge mistakes because of that. Even talking about this, it's just, it's emotional because it was such a devastating place to be, which I thought I'd never be.
Welcome to the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, a podcast about leaders for leaders, one that exists to inspire legitimate and authentic leadership in the workplace and beyond. And I'm your host, Tim G. Williams, ICF Certified Executive Coach and Consultant. Now, regardless of where you are in your leadership journey, aspiring, emerging, established, or retired, this is for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the Bonafide Leaders Podcast experience. Welcome in to another edition of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Tim G. Williams. And with me today is a guy I almost like to think of as a brother from another mother. And you'll understand what that means when we get into it a little bit. His name is Brian Williams. And Brian is the CEO of Perspectivity International. He's been a 20-year corporate veteran of Silicon Valley startups and Fortune 500 companies. He's delivered hundreds of sales presentations across over 13 countries. He was a semifinalist, this is the thing I think I'm most impressed with, in Toastmasters World Championship of Public Speaking, ranking in the top 40 out of 30,000 contestants. He's worked with some of the largest companies in the world, including AT&T, Cisco, and Citi, to name a few. And a best-selling author says that Brian is, quote, one of the most dynamic motivational speakers in America today. Brian has a bachelor's degree in computer science from Texas A&M University, is a married father of 4, and outside of the professional realm, he's a fitness fan, which I knew, an amateur photographer, I did not know, and a prison and homeless ministry leader. And so with that backdrop, welcome, Brian, into the podcast today. Welcome on in, man.
Yes, sir. Love being here. It's interesting listening to that bio because I'm like, wow, okay. Kind of forget, you don't think about the things that you do. So appreciate you sharing that.
I appreciate you being on. You're a guy I've thought about having on at different points. And I don't know, it just kind of hit me for this season that maybe this was the right time. And so I'm excited to kind of explore a little bit. But before we explore, it's kind of crazy if you think about life and how people end up being connected. We have all these things in common, but it was maybe 2 years ago, we got introduced, mutual business colleague, Jeff. It was like, hey, you guys need to meet. It's at the end of a conference. We started talking, found out we go to the same university, Texas A&M. We both worked in tech. We both lived in Silicon Valley. We both, men of faith. Sure. We're here in North Texas, and then we do leadership development. We like sports. We play sports. We know some of the same people, but somehow we never met.
True.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, it was. I was thinking about that driving here, actually, how that works and how different the same energies somehow create synergy and you find yourself just connect. And it doesn't happen all the time, but the guy who introduced us, I was just talking, sharing my story, and he stops me and goes, no, you got to go meet this guy.
Wow.
Come on, and we got up from the table. He saw you across the room and said, and I was like, so what's you got to meet this guy. Y'all are the same people. And sure enough, I haven't seen Jeff or talked to him since.
Yeah.
He was right. But you notice when people are introducing you to someone with that kind of energy, know there's something there. So I was actually interested to meet you, and glad we met.
Yes, definitely. All right, so one more thing, I got to embarrass you before we finish.
Uh-oh.
You are an author yourself, and you're a pretty popular dude. Let me tell you how popular you are.
Uh-oh.
Of all the guests I've had maybe one or two that's had their own Wikipedia page. But for you, my friend, you have the most LinkedIn followers coming in at 13,000 plus.
Okay.
So that is your claim to fame.
Okay.
Okay,
I didn't know that.
All right. So look, we're going to get into this. As you know, what we talked about, season 4 is all about setbacks, disappointments, failures, mistakes, those times in our life where from a professional, personal standpoint, we've been impacted in a major way and it felt like maybe we're in the pit, we're in the valley. And the idea is to give the listener a sense of what that was like. But those who are now on the other side of it, who have had some success. Before we get there though, I want to just maybe give the audience a sense of who Brian is. Tell us a little bit about kind of where you grew up, your background, maybe, I guess, that entry point into Texas A&M, and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
Okay. From San Antonio, older brother, younger sister, single mom. She's a waitress at a restaurant downtown San Antonio. So didn't grow up with a lot, government project housing, but that environment taught me an awful lot. I'm grateful for it today. Hustle, hard work. I saw drugs and alcohol destroy the lives of many people. And so to this day, I've never touched an ounce of either because growing up, I just saw something in my brain said, those two things always produce bad outcomes.
Wow.
And so something in my nervous system said, avoid those two at all costs. People don't believe me when I say that because I pledged Alpha in college and the fraternity. It's like, okay, you've been in a fraternity and you've never drank, but all of my line brothers will tell you to this day. But it was really not that I'm such a noble guy, but I just saw the side of the effects of those two things. And also that environment motivated me more than anything else. I got to get out of this environment. I hate it. I didn't hate being in the environment. I was just really uncomfortable in the environment. A lot of love from my mom and my grandparents. I'm a big hugger to this day because they hugged all the time. And I my kids, my boys, my daughter, I mean, I hug them all the time. My wife. But I actually like school. I didn't tell anybody. But I enjoyed school, man.
Can't do that.
I love, not in the hood. I love learning. I remember Mr. Ferguson, Miss Arguello. I remember my teachers, what I learned from them, Mr. Melanson, all of them. The reason I even became a computer scientist is I'm in Miss Arguello's 8th grade typing class, and you have to type all these things to practice. And we were typing up and the focus of the exercise is just practice typing. But I'm reading the story, which happened to be about computers and robots and technology and science is going to take over the world. And I'm growing up in the hood and I'm thinking, man, be a part of world takeover. That could be kind of interesting. So, and that day I said, I want to study computers. I want to be a computer scientist. And that's how I was fascinated by the whole, idea of this, how pervasive computers would be. And they explained how they would be a part of everything. And this is way back in the day. And so sure enough, I hear about this thing called a scholarship.
Scholarship? What's
that? And yeah, exactly. And she was like, my counselor was like, yeah, they pay for you to go. I said, what do you mean they just give you the money? And she was like, yeah. I said, so like, what do you have to do? Like, do you have to pay it back? How do you get? She's like, no, you just fill out these applications and you got to have good grades. I said, so in other words, I got to just do homework and get paid to do homework? And she was like, yeah. And I am telling you, I applied for like 15, 20 scholarships and got like 4 or 5. And I graduated. I literally owed $500 when I graduated A&M. And it was because my dad told me, my stepdad said, hey, you're spending a lot at a because I had money left over because, once they pay they give you the check. And I was like, man, I never had this much money in my life.
Right.
So
that's
I got
the good old bursar's office.
Exactly. So I started spending that money and he was like, I think you might run out. And I'm thinking, there's no way I can run out of this much money. And my senior year, I had to get a loan. One of my frat brothers took out a loan, and I paid him back within like 6 months of leaving school. And that's how I went to Silicon Valley and did, some cool things out there.
So that's what I want to pivot to next. Come from a background where you were motivated to have something different. Computers inspired you. Hey, it's computer science. Oh, by the way, I can make this scholarship money. Let me go ahead and do that. So talk about, maybe before we get into the setbacks, let's talk about kind of your early start professionally. What did you get into? What type of work did you do? Who did you work with? Like, what was that like for you?
Actually, so my first job was right a few miles from here in Richardson. I was at BNR, Northern Telecom, and I was in Inroads back in the day in college, and they offer summer internships if you get enough to qualify.
Yeah.
So I was an intern for 4 summers there, and then they hired me right out of school. And we were doing, so we were writing the software, testing the software that allowed you to make credit card, long distance calls using a credit card. And that was a first with MCI, the first project I worked on.
Wow. You taking us back right there.
Yeah, man. Cool. Yeah. So, these are pivotal moments. I remember, so when I first get the job, now you got to remember where I grew up. So we come into the building, and those circular doors with the panels, they just rotate so the air doesn't, And so, and I'm with this head of HR, this lady, and she and I are walking in the building, and as those door turnstiles are turning, I get in the same stall with her. I'm like, okay, well, she got in, so I'm supposed. So keep in mind, and I'm taller than her, and we're like, I'm behind her, okay, and I'm bumping into her, and we're stopping and starting, and it was the most awkward, uncomfortable position. And this is day one. And I remember as we were coming out of their door, I was thinking to myself, I got to go update my resume. These people, I'm done here. And thankfully, she was super cool about it. She laughed about it and thought it was hysterical and never mentioned a word. And we were off to the races. But that was my very initial introduction to corporate America.
Okay.
Thankfully, it got better after that.
Yeah, I'm guessing it did. All right, so you moved around a little bit. You started in Richardson, but I know you lived in Arizona. You lived in the Valley for a little bit. Let's begin to kind of think about that journey. So what were you doing maybe right up to the moment where you begin to experience some type of a failure or a setback? What was happening in the weeks, the months leading up to that period of time?
So that's the funny thing, right, is the storm clouds never rolled in, or at least I didn't see them. No, they didn't roll in. I just woke up and there were 200-mile-an-hour winds. It hit that suddenly.
Wow.
And there was no preparation. And I was very unprepared, more so emotionally. That's the big thing, right? Because fear, right? False evidence that appears real. My fear was very real because I look back on all the things that happened and I go, I totally overreacted, did way too much. The 800-pound gorilla was really an 8-pound stuffed gorilla, right? But I was responding and running as if this 800-pound gorilla was attacking me. And but you learn a lot from that when you learn how it's all about perception and lack of faith. But the storm clouds didn't brew. Otherwise, I would have had time to prepare. I love strategy and preparation. No time here. It was just, I woke up and the winds were howling and things were falling apart and I panicked, and
so what happened?
So it was all, it all happened around COVID.
Okay.
2020. And I will say in the beginning, it was a combination of COVID, its impact on our business, and in combination in May of 2020. So COVID kind of gets really cranking around March, April 2020. May of 2020, the George Floyd murder happens. So those two combined created a lot of things that happened with me psychologically and emotionally, which fast forward 4 months later, I am rushed to the hospital in the ER with chest pains. And I'll fill in the gaps between April and May of 2020 and September of 2020. Mm-hmm. But that gap of time, that duration of time, the stress and the fear and the anxiety had built so much so that I was asleep in the middle of the night. It's 3:30 in the morning, and it feels like someone is like just pressing on my chest. And, I'm a guy, so I go, hey, you know what? I could bounce back from this. I think I'm okay. But before I go there, I'll share what got me there.
Okay.
So when COVID happened, we did all of our work in office. Mm-hmm. So it's an executive coaching and leadership development company.
Right.
So
and at this point, you're a number of years into the business.
Sure.
You're not like just starting out at this point.
Right. So at that point, we're 8 years in.
Right.
We're established. We're working with all the big brands you mentioned and a few more. And so in a course of a week, I get all these phone calls. And it was almost like my name had become Brian, I'm sorry. Brian, I'm sorry. Because Brian, I'm so sorry. We got to put everything on hold. Because no one's everyone's in a panic, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so our revenue goes to zero.
And so at this point, from a business execution perspective, you execute business in person.
Right.
That's the way
100%.
You do it.
100%.
The thought of doing something outside of that model would have been foreign, given the success that you all had been having up to this point.
In fact, one client told us flat out, we love you guys, but we are confident that you will not be able to get the results virtually as you've done in person. And they were 100% convinced of that. And so I went in a panic mode at the time. So most of the kids are still home. I got two in college, two in high school, one in high school, one in middle school at the time. And she's probably still in homeschool. And I'm the provider. I'm the leader. That was the first time in my life where everything started to fall apart. And I remember my wife was like, so what are we going to do? And man, I'm the speaker, the leader, and that was the first time in our marriage. We've been married 30 years last year. I said, you know what?
Congratulations.
I'm not sure. Thank you. I said, I'm not sure. And I could see her go, oh my gosh.
Because up to this point, she'd seen you be sure.
And in some really difficult situations, because that's what growing up where I grew up, that environment taught me hustle and grit and grind, and no one's coming to save you. And that I learned that when there was a murder in the place we lived, and we called 911, and no one showed up, which blew my mind. I found out later that the ambulance where we lived, they were not allowed to come there without police escort. And the police were saying, we're busy, we're fighting crime. We can't be escorting you guys around to pick up a body. That's how they saw the world. And so that experience taught me like, wow.
No one's going to be there for you.
No one's coming to save you. Even in an emergency, no one's coming to save you. And so as a result, you learn, okay, well, if that's what that is, we got to make it happen. There's some negative side effects of that because your nervous system, if you design it in that way, you could be on a beach looking for danger.
Sure.
Because it's built for protection and survival.
Sure.
I had to work with some counselors and therapists to kind of deprogram that.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of a conference I recently went to. One of the speakers is an author of this book. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I think it's called 7 Primal Questions, if I'm not mistaken. And as you were talking, one of the 7 questions, in fact, number 1 in the book is, am I safe? And to your point, you could be completely safe in a completely wonderful environment for most people in the environment, except those maybe who've been impacted by trauma, who see that completely differently.
Sure.
Right? And so it's not weird or strange that you have these feelings, and especially in a time of heightened insecurity, when in a week you get phone calls saying, Brian, I'm sorry, Brian, I'm sorry, Brian, I'm sorry. Wife says, what are we going to do?
Wow.
So it kind of makes sense, right?
I'm interested in this book and this story because I want to learn more about it. You know, but yeah, that's what happened. Now while this is taking place, right? So you're talking March, April. I remember being in the office hours and hours trying to figure out what we're going to do. Because one company said, if you can prove to us that you can get results, we will continue the project virtually. So what we're going to do is bring on two different, groups of employees, and you'll work with both, and we'll get their raw feedback. And I went to work. Now, keep in mind, Zoom is not, no one's doing anything virtually, right? We used probably, I think I saw every virtual meeting software on the market.
Okay. I was going to ask you, which one did you even go with?
At the time, I wouldn't recommend it now. Well, at the time, it was Adobe. Adobe had, believe it or not, they had at the time, it offered the most complex suite of services to try to create an in-person experience, right? And so that's what we used, but it was very cumbersome. It took a lot of manual configuration.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, you've used
for that particular product. No shade to Adobe, but Adobe as a business in terms of how it functions. I think it's built more for those who are more sophisticated.
No doubt.
As opposed to a user who just wants to hit stop, start, go.
A lot of their products, right, are lot of dials to move around, and this one was no exception.
Yeah.
But again, like, we got to do what we got to do. And so it was almost like a manual configuration. And I remember just being up there hours and hours at a time. Like, the test is coming and failing is not an option. And thankfully, we do the meeting and they go, okay, good news, bad news. Said, the bad news is it's not ready. Good news is you scored way higher than we thought you guys would. Okay. We were not expecting to get the results. So they said, if you change these three things, we'll try it again with the second group. And of course, as soon as that call ended, boom, I go right to work on those three. We clean it up. We do the second one. Scores are similar to in person, and we're off to the races. But that didn't take place until downstream. We didn't get the contract renewed until maybe 6 months later.
Wow. Okay.
Now, in the meantime, the George Floyd thing happens, and that's when the dark night hits.
And is that a dark night? Is that professionally? Did something happen there? Is that a personal thing? What was going on?
So I watched the video once. That's literally all I could take. I have not, from that day till this, I've never seen a clip soundbite of it again. And I got three boys. They're all built athletically. Between the three, they're between 6 foot and 6'4", dreadlocks. They fit the profile. Mm-hmm. And I've taught them their whole life. You ever run into the cops, talk slow, move slow, dome light on, hands on the steering wheel, right? And so when I watched George Floyd handcuffed, talking slow, moving slow, on the ground, complying, and then begging for his life, and then I saw his life taken, it literally put a shock into my system, because I'm saying to myself, that was my safety mechanism for my boys, and it doesn't work anymore. And so I didn't realize at the time I was in fear for their lives as well as my own. And it really hit me extremely hard. I mean, I watched activists and the protests. And this is the one of the biggest problems I made is I was consuming all of that content constantly, but fear was driving the consumption.
And I'm imagining that maybe how you're spending your time is twofold. One, you're trying to figure out this business thing. How in the world are we going to be able to make business happen, commerce happen in a virtual, they're shutting me down. I got to convince them that we can make it work. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you're bothered by what you've just witnessed. Third, and related to that is, wow, everything I thought would work actually doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned not just for me, but more importantly, as for those of us who have children, for my offspring. And so you're consuming this media out of fear, not knowing necessarily why you're doing it. You just probably are in disbelief like many of us were. But that's not helping you.
Not at all.
And what's your mental state as you're experiencing this period of time? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Confusion, doubt, fear are probably because I think those three things, if you are what you think about, Scripture says as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And so if your nervous system is feeding on confusion, doubt, and fear, you're now acting on that which you think about. And so I'm driven to consume, what else is happening so I can be prepared and ready. Like I need to play defense, so I need to understand what play they're running. And that is just a recipe for disaster. Because looking back, I began to watch a lot of what was happening. And I'm also trying to figure out how to get this business running.
Sure.
And so you have real, genuine fear for what will happen to me and my boys. And you also have, so you have a sense of losing safety, your financial security, potentially your life, and the life of your children. So the things most important to me are at risk. At least that's what my belief system was. And you are what you believe. And as a result, I started making huge mistakes because of that. Even talking about this, it's just, it's emotional because it was such a devastating place to be, which I thought I'd never be. And I ended up taking loans, business loans I never should have taken. The size of the loans were way too large because it's based out of fear. It wasn't based on logic and reason or even economics. And so these things just start compounding on each other. And when I'm stressed, really stressed, I grind my teeth. So I'm thinking I need to go to the dentist. It was hurting that bad because you just, and because your nervous system, it will respond to what you're thinking, and the feelings come later. And so I'm thinking, I need to go see the dentist. This is like, what is happening? And I'm not connecting the two at the time. And I remember this was a different point in life, but another point where this kind of stress hit, the dentist says, man, your teeth are great. Like, it's all good. You don't need to come see me. And I said, no, doc, I'm telling you, something's going on. And he says, I think you're stressed. I was like, I think I'm good. He says, all of my male patients say that. How about you ask your wife? I go home and ask my wife. She says, oh yeah, I can hear you grinding when I'm walking down the hallway. I don't even need to be in the room. I had no clue.
Wow.
And so that's how much the stress had gotten to me, and how much and also I will add that I love justice. I absolutely am driven by justice, meaning, people being mistreated affects me deeply, especially in this country as it relates to Black people. If you go back to our history in this country with slavery, I think it's the most grotesque treatment of humans in the history of the world. I would say the Holocaust, it would be added to that. And to just see, I never thought in my lifetime I would see anything close to that. And so witnessing what happened on the screen taught me, oh, this is still a possibility in this day, even in this country, with all the laws and all the progress that's been made. And so it deeply disturbed me. And then another mistake I made is I was being invited to speak at a lot of webinars and podcasts on the topic. Well, you're a Black male, you're a father, you're a leader, you're a business owner. How is all of these things? Can you speak to us? I had it was 100 white people on the call, and I was the only Black person. And the host says, on this call, you can only ask questions. Brian is going to speak because these people were interested in what is the Black perspective in America today.
Right. They're seeking understanding, coming to learn, and you are the person who's going to impart that wisdom and knowledge to give them that understanding.
Without understanding the weight of what I was being asked to do.
Yeah.
And having to relive all these experiences. What I needed was healing and therapy, not to be on stage rehashing all the things that I'm going through. Because one might think that's therapeutic, but it isn't if you're still in it.
Absolutely. Bonafide Leaders works with senior executives, established leaders, and emerging leaders. We exist to help you, your business, and your teams thrive, specializing in executive coaching, leadership development, organizational consulting, and keynote speaking, providing the absolute highest level of quality and service. We partner with our clients to help them elevate their leadership effectiveness, navigate organizational change, culture, and leadership transitions, leading to bottom-line results. If these are the problems you're seeking to solve, reach out to me at bonafideleaders.com/contact, and let's explore together. So let's recap. You're in this period, it's COVID. It's, middle of the year 2020. You don't know what's going on with the business. Everybody's telling you, sorry, I don't know that we're going to be able to keep you on. You got to try it out to be virtual. We're going to have to say no to you, that kind of thing. You're trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're deeply immersed personally because you value justice.
Mm-hmm.
The dude sitting next to you also does. So I get exactly where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yours truly was also on a few of those panels.
Is that right?
During that period of time. So I know exactly what that feeling is like when you feel like you're the voice for like a people and you're still struggling with those emotions yourself. Couple decisions you've made to take out some business loans, too larger than you needed. And then the other is spending time on stage when you're not necessarily healed.
True.
Not to make this any worse, but was there anything else going on in terms of mistakes made, decisions that you were making, maybe out of fear in that period of time?
I would say the only thing was not being aware, not having enough self-awareness to know that that I needed help. I knew I needed help. I didn't know where to go to get it. So I went to the place that I've always gone in these times of crisis, and that is the church.
Sure.
Now the story twists.
Okay.
Because that was the first time that I can remember that the church failed me desperately bad. They didn't know what to do with it. A lot of churches just kind of soft pedaled it, backed away from it. And I'm looking for truth and hope and healing and some justice. And the church is the light in a dark world. And I was like, did y'all turn the light on? Do you understand the gravity of what happened? Because I can't imagine Jesus, leaning back in his chair when some injustice like this has happened. But I felt like the church did in a very big way. However, there was one message that was given by a white man who grew up where his parents had essentially indentured servants, a black family that worked on their farm and and it was the most powerful message I have ever heard. 100%. That guy, as a white man, he embodied his level of hatred for injustice would equal ours, and he spoke to it on stage and charged white Christians from the message, from the pulpit. Now, as you can imagine, he didn't preach there again.
We laugh, right? My initial reaction was a laugh. And then on the other side of it, I'm like, isn't that horrible?
Yeah.
That's so unfortunate.
Very much so. but also in sync with the scriptures. Sure. Jesus' first sermon, his first message, when he finishes his first message, the Bible says, and the crowd would encroach upon him that they might seize him and throw him over the cliff, right? Because darkness doesn't like light. Those are enemies of each other. And so I actually ended up, and he's a really, well-known pastor and spoke at one of the large mega churches here. And I somehow bump into him at a restaurant alone. And I found my way over there to thank him personally for having the courage to speak truth to power, to go against the grain, and to also let you know you set people free that day. And I was one of those people. And I did ask him, I also noticed you're not there anymore. But he didn't want to touch that, and I'm cool with that. But I know people who serve there on some leadership areas, and they kind of shared a little bit. But
sure,
it was a really rough ride. 2020 was a rough ride for me.
And then the other thing is that maybe there's also a feeling of loneliness.
Oh, 100%.
You can't get out. You're more extroverted kind of a guy. That's part of it. That's your personality. That's your disposition. It's part of what you do for your business also. And then who do you bring these issues to? Who can you share with in community when there's not a lot of community going on?
True.
During this period of time. So you compound fear and stress, job concerns, business concerns, making some decisions that maybe you wouldn't have made otherwise in different circumstances. So a lot going on in 2020.
I never thought about the isolation piece, but that's another big piece. Bible says it's not good for a man to be alone. People think that's relating to marriage. No, it's not good for a man to be alone, right? Especially in a crisis. And I never thought about that, but obviously you learn a lot from going through something like that. But I never thought that I'd end up, with this, it was like this constricting pressure in my chest.
So that's September. Okay, let's talk about that. So it's 3:30, middle of the night. You feel like, I'm a man, I can handle this. At what point
don't take this advice, by the way.
At what point do you realize maybe, I am a man, but maybe I can't handle this?
Well, okay, it wasn't me. My wife was traveling at the time. Otherwise, I probably would have ended up in the ER a lot sooner. I get up and I start searching on heart attack symptoms, and I can see it's not that. So I kind of relaxed a little bit. And then I eventually lay down. I think I get up and just get busy as a distraction. And then I feel it again once I start working. So I called my primary care doctor, explained what's happening. He was out. He won't be back till tomorrow. And this is how God shows up in our life. Is I was about to hang up. I get emotional thinking about it. And right before we were about to hang up, she says, you know what? Hold on just a second. Let me let you talk to this other nurse who's here today. And we get on the phone, and she has the voice, the energy of a Black grandma in the South. And she says, baby, tell me what's going on. So I instantly am talking to my grandmother, all right? And she says, she eventually says, baby, you only have one heart, and I want to make sure it's okay. And from the sounds of it, I'm not sure from this phone call. She says, where are you? And I told her. She said, there's a Care Now right on the corner of these two streets. Is anyone there who can drive you? And that's when I'm like, okay, why do I need someone to drive me? And she says, I need you to go to the Care Now right now. And her sense of urgency and the tone in her voice and that grandmotherly disposition she had, I hung up the phone and I did exactly what she said.
You followed orders.
100%. Yeah. Until I parked. I'm moving in the parking slot. I'm looking into the building, and there's a glass door, and I can look and see through it. And something just says, I feel really good right now. And I put my car in reverse to go back home. And that's when I sense God saying, get your behind in that hospital, in that care. And once I get this, I go right in there, and they do all the tests and all the things. And I'm telling him, listen, at the time I was running 15, 20 miles a week. I happen to be vegetarian. I'm giving him all the lists. And he said, listen, he finally says, listen, I can tell you take care of yourself. I got all the data to prove it. However, the numbers here have me concerned. Your troponin levels are elevated. Troponin is a enzyme, chemical that your heart gives off when it's under stress and duress, elevated stress and duress. and my troponin levels were elevated. And he showed me the normal range, and then he showed me my range. And he says, I can't let you leave here with these numbers. And for the first time, I leaned back and went, okay. Now, that included, he says, I'm going to bring you a stretcher. No, bring you a wheelchair. We're going to transport you to a stretcher, which will transport you to the ambulance, which will transport you to the hospital. And I told him, I'm parked right outside. I will meet you guys there. Literally what I told him. And that's when he brought the troponin, the chart to me, and said, this is what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I've ever been in an ambulance. And the humility hit me like a ton of bricks, because I don't know who's driving. I don't know where I'm going. It was dark, and there's just this square window in the back, and I'm trying to orient to where I am, but I'm moving backwards.
Yep.
And I'm trying to see, was that the 7-Eleven on the? I have no control. I have no influence. My heart is having some kind of issue. No one is with me. And it is the ultimate degree of humility and helplessness.
Yes.
Which is where I needed to be.
Man, 2025 for me, as well as this year, has been about this phrase, I surrender. And it is such a difficult thing to do. But as you know, with our faith, we die daily if we're doing it right. To our own desires, and sort of relinquish control, and we yield, right? And what I'm hearing you say is that in that moment, you finally took your hands off the wheel.
I would say that my hands were ripped from the wheel. It sounds noble to say, yes, I humbled myself before the Lord and I yielded. No, this is a story that I just shared. I said what I said, and they told me what they told me, and I got in the wheel. And it was this grown man is pushing me around in a wheelchair. And I get in the stretcher, and they do the protocol. They're strapping it down.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm getting it, and I'm looking around like, what is all of this stuff? And what is this beeping? And I remember asking her, like, what does that number mean? And because I'm trying to understand what is happening. And I never forget. So when I get to the hospital, I'm there for 16 hours, and it's COVID, no visitors. And even the nurses, now COVID is ramping up. So even the nurses are coming in. You okay?
At a distance.
Yeah, and they're all masked up and all the things. And so intense isolation, phone battery dies. So you're humble, you're afraid, you're lonely, you're the fear is really setting in. And that's when God starts to do his work. And in that fear and isolation is when I said, I dropped my shoulders and said, okay, I surrender. I have nothing left. I have no solution. I got no energy because I was exhausted because I've been up all night. I didn't sleep well that night. And all this news is hitting me. And I haven't seen anyone in my family yet. And they kept saying, are you going to tell your wife? Because she's out of town.
Right.
And I was like, when I get out of here, I'm going to be okay. And then it finally hits that I'm not going home. And they're doing all these tests, and they don't find. And here's the tragedy in this: I remember the cardiologist I can hear him coming down the hallway, and the nurse comes like, "Okay, what's the word with Mr. Williams?" And I hear him say, "Guy has the strongest heart in the hospital. We got to get him out of here. We got some sick people to deal with," because all the reports, all the things show clear. Because they're not testing for stress. They don't test for what I went. They didn't ask me, so what are you going through and how, I learned from a friend that I was having burnout, panic attack, anxiety attack, whatever the word is. I learned from a friend what really happened. And long story short, counseling, therapy, I'm a huge fan today of yoga, sleep, meditation, water, breathing.
Yeah.
Deep meditation, this whoop that I wear, every morning I get up, it tracks strain level. It tracks not just sleep, but quality of sleep.
Right.
It tracks so many things. And my wife will ask me one day, how you feeling, babe? I'm like, hold on a second. And I'll grab my Whoop app. I'm good. She's like, why do you look at that to know how you're feeling?
Because he's a computer scientist.
Yeah,
that's why.
it's logical and analytical, because what I've learned is I'm such a hard charging, fast paced person that at the time I didn't know how to feel. Because I would push through the feeling. Mm-hmm. So I didn't trust my feeling. I trust the data.
Absolutely.
And that's
I resonate with that. I resonate with that.
As you aggressively nod.
Not to say it's right, but I resonate and I understand where you're coming from.
Sure.
So let's move the story forward a little bit. You're in this really, really difficult place, medically speaking, emotionally speaking, business, all of that. How do you begin to turn the corner? What happens? What changes for you that you begin to turn the corner?
So I reached out to a therapist friend, and man, she was unbelievable. It opened my eyes to a whole new world that I didn't know existed. And that's when I learned about, the impact stress can have on the body and how it shows up, and it's unpredictable. And so I began to place a value on those things I listed: sleep, meditation, yoga. And I remember going to I found this yoga studio. My wife introduced me to yoga because I was talking about it. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But I went and I was like, okay, that was pretty cool. So I find this place. I'm the only guy in there.
Of course you are.
And I remember I get so into it because the energy in the room was the lights and the music and the instructor, she talks slow, and all of her words had like this soft and calm to it, which is a world I've never gone to. I would run by that room all day long, my old self. And I remember just feeling so much rest and peace and calm to the point where it was a holiday and I showed up and I'm waiting outside. I'm like, what is the deal? And then I go to my phone. I was like, oh, wow, they're not even open today. But I was so hungry for it that I wanted more of that because I could feel what it was doing to my body. And now I can feel the stress in my neck and my back. Like I know when it's coming. I'm sensitive to it and I respond to it. And my Whoop will tell off on me, but I can feel it even before it. I used to rely on it. Now I can feel it in my body and I know how to respond to it. Mm-hmm. And I can feel when I'm tensing up and the breathing and the sleeping. And it's a beautiful balance. Whereas before it was just, I remember I listened to this song in the gym and it was called, and one of the lyrics is all gas, no brakes. And that was my theme song.
I know that song.
All gas, no brakes, baby. And I'm telling you today, man, that will send you straight to the grave. A lot of motivational speakers, influencers, entrepreneurs will sing that song.
10X, all gas, no brakes.
Man,
all lines,
I'm
right?
just not here for it. Not here for it at all.
Yeah. So the business, talk about the resurrection of the business. What changed? What happened? You got this one company to say, hey, that's pretty good virtual. How did you shift from a business perspective?
I basically leveraged that and said, these are the results we're getting virtually. These are our scores when we were live. These were our scores virtually, and they're the same. So we can make it happen. So I just leveraged that, and it slowly started to come back. Mm-hmm. And then we started saying, wow, this is very profitable. I don't have to travel. I don't have to spend buying all this material, right? And so my perspective shifted. It was a blessing, right? And then at one point we were doing like 80% of our business virtually up until like just a year and a half, 2 years ago. And people start bringing us back in. That was like, I don't know, maybe probably like 70% in person. It's kind of shifted.
Right.
Which is great for an extrovert because I feed off the energy of the people. Mm-hmm. But basically, that was kind of the shift and the transition that took place. And we started to believe in our ability to get real, tangible results virtually. I did notice that a good number of our trainers and facilitators were not able to pull it off virtually. It was a very different thing to look at a camera and act excited and laugh and engage, right? And people really struggle with it. And we start looking at, we do surveys and feedback for 13 years we've been in business, and I read 100% of it. I'm a big believer in feedback.
Yeah.
And we ended up having to make some tough choices based on the feedback. And that was one lesson learned that was a little awkward. Like some of your highest performers in person were the lowest performers virtually. But yeah, eventually things turned around, and now is blowing and going. In fact, things were going so crazy last year. I got a email in December from American Airlines saying, "Thank you, Mr. Williams, for the 38 trips you took for us in 2025." And I was thinking, I knew it was a big number because my body felt it. I was exhausted. We canceled trips. We canceled the cruise. We canceled the jet. We just started canceling. And that's, again, a lesson learned. Before, I would just push through. Now, I've given myself permission to say no and to value rest and restoration and not just push through and make things happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a combination of age, wisdom, experience that has taught me that, but I'm at a place now. I was just telling one of my kids yesterday, like, hey, man, you got to pump the brakes. Like, you got to, listening to you says you need to balance all that activity and energy with some rest and restoration. Otherwise, bad things happen.
Yeah. So things turned around for you, but I'm guessing they weren't overnight. It was a bit of a journey to get there. And so I'm thinking about the listener right now who's in the pit. They're in the valley. It's a struggle. It may not be coronavirus. It may not be George Floyd, but it could be a bank loan. It could be decisions they've got to make on personnel. Could be just personal life challenges, maybe death in the family, whatever is going on. For that person right now who's in the pit, what's your message to them based upon your own lived experience?
Oh, man. I think especially type A people, our tendency is to make it happen, even if you got to do it alone. And I was listening to this pastor 2 weeks ago, made a profound statement that really blessed me. And he said, in his life experience, he's found men need two things. And I was like, okay, here's a secret sauce. Two things. Number one is humility. Number two is truth. And usually those feed off of each other. Because if you're too proud, you already know the truth. You ask no questions. If you're humble, you ask lots of questions. And through that questioning, you gain truth, insight, wisdom. You can make changes. And for me, as you heard my story about, I can drive, I don't need to go to the hospital. Pride is what got me in the place where I was. Lack of humility, not asking questions, not asking for help. Because if you ask for help, if you seek support and acknowledge the truth about where you are, like, I am in trouble, I am in crisis. That's called the truth. Yeah. But I was in denial. I will fight my way out of this like I fight my way through everything else in my life. But there always comes a time where the bully is bigger than you. And I was swinging at this bully with everything I had, and he would fall down and he would get back up, and then he'd fall down and get back up. And in my wiring was keep swinging. But when they keep getting up, you start running out of energy, and then you start running out of time. And is what I think happens. So I would say seek humility and seek truth. The truth of who God is, and the truth of who you are, and the truth of where you are. And that's going to be really uncomfortable if you've had success, because you usually come out on top. So it was hard for me to acknowledge that I'm losing.
Yeah.
Losing is difficult for me. But what I've learned is, if you're open to the truth, people, you should know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that's all truth. People think it's the truth of the gospel. It's the truth of the red letter in the book. No, it's all truth. Brian, you are arrogant and self-centered. That's the truth. That will set you free if you listen to that truth, right? Yeah. All truth sets us free. So I've fallen in love with the truth about who I am and how I show up. And I'm open to that truth. And the way that I seek feedback in my business, and it's helped us tremendously, I now aggressively seek that same kind of feedback for myself, because other people can see in me what I can't see in myself. And I'm sensitive to how I show up with those folks. And I want to bring the right kind of energy. I was golfing with a pastor once, and he says, I was asking him, like, he was just awesome author, leader, pastor. And I says, what's your, we were golfing and said, what's your swing thought for life? Swing thought, how do you think about the swing before you swing? And he said, my swing thought for life would be, I want people to feel their best when they're around me. And when they leave me, I want them to think I'm good enough. And when I golfed with him that day, I felt it while we were golfing. And I felt that after we finished, which was awesome and amazing, because I sat with him for 9 holes and I played terribly that day. And the guys we were playing with were making fun of my swing because I was terrible. And when we were in the cart, he just wants to connect with people. He doesn't even care about the score. And he says, hey, you're not rotating the hips on the swing, by the way. He just a quick little, by the way, I noticed you're not rotating your hip on. And I started I'm killing it after that, right? And that was that one little tweak. So when he says, I want people to feel their best when they're with me, he gave me that one little nugget because he cared about what I cared about in the moment, which was just the other folks who happen to be pastors were just, oh, Brian, that was terrible, man. I've never seen I've never seen a golf shot that bad. I'm not trying to talk. I've just never seen a golf shot that bad before. But Wayne Cordero, man, Pastor Wayne Cordero in Hawaii, that guy, he's the real deal.
All right. So look, as we get ready to wrap it up, we've covered a lot of territory. Talked about childhood and how the environment that you were in was motivation for leaving that environment. Spurred you on to computer science, technology, and that began to give you some wins. You go and you start this business, and who knew that coronavirus would show up? You have a business that is an in-person business that now has to pivot. There's a moment where a man is murdered on television. Everybody in the world sees that. That affects many of us in a deep way. Not even aware of how it's impacting you. Mm-hmm. You find yourself in the emergency room. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the steering wheel is, what do you call it, ripped.
Yeah, man, for sure. No doubt.
So I'm hearing you say a couple things for those who are listening today. Humility and truth. Learn from things that happen to you. Grow in your awareness. Mm-hmm. And maybe yoga for the guys may not be such a bad thing. Huh?
I would highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Anything else you want to leave for us before we wrap it up today?
Telling the story was therapeutic. I never sat and let's walk through it so methodically with someone asking deep, insightful questions and then giving me space to share. So I appreciate that. And I know you well enough to know you were asking those questions out of curiosity and interest, not just for the sake of a podcast. I would just add that I'm a different person as a result of the experience. I thank God for the experience. I listened to a podcast today where the guy says his darkest moment produced the brightest light in his life. And I think that's been true for me, no doubt. So people say, if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently? Mm-hmm. Absolutely nothing. Everything that happened for a reason. And I get that now. So no regrets, no complaints. I heard a speaker once say, I will not complain in my misery, and I will not apologize for my success. Mm-hmm. So when I'm winning, I bring no apology. When I'm losing, I bring no complaint. And the only other thing that I'd add to that is the thing that made all of this so difficult was, and I didn't share this early, I just forgot to do it, but my dad left when I came home from the hospital and never came back. And so I always took his absence was due to my presence, and that something was broken inside of me, struggled mightily with self-worth, self-esteem. I'm not worth anything. And so that demon started to peek its head while I was going through all of that. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough. That's why this is happening to me. And so I think that kind of accelerated the demise, if you will.
Yeah.
That swing thought. Got a lot of help, therapy, counseling in that area. Big proponent. I'm going to look at you. Big proponent of a therapy, help, counseling, and admitting that we're broken and that we need help, because that was difficult for me to do.
And it's hard for successful people to do that. The things that we need to do the most are often the most difficult things for us to admit or to take action on, because we're used to winning.
Yes.
And losing, like you said so profoundly earlier, is hard.
And I think the reason for that is the tools we use to win in business, we try to apply in life, and they do not. There's no cross connect.
Not always.
Yeah.
Not always. And we have to be careful with that. So look, this has been incredible. You know how much I value our relationship, our friendship. We're going to chop it up and have lunch after this, too.
Yes, sir. Can't wait. Mediterranean, man. My favorite.
Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you, Brian, for being here as well.
I enjoyed it, man, very much so. Cameras or not, I enjoyed it. But it also helped me understand we need to spend more time together, man. There's a lot happening here, so I appreciate it. Good being here.
All right, cool.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening. If you got value from this podcast, don't keep it a secret. Subscribe, leave a rating or a review, and share it with someone you know. Until next time, remember, our world is starving for bona fide leaders. Take your leadership to the next level by applying one thing you heard today.